just looking at your comedy video, the YouTube video,
Yeah.
thing, just going over that again, and I went through my whole thing with the British Bigfoot, researching it, looking at so many locations, mulling it over in my mind again and again. Is it possible? Could it be possible? Even wrote a little blog on the Doggerland Bridge, and
Uh-huh.
maybe this is how they got here, if they are here, and which was shot down by a few people. And I thought, well, we had bears and wolves once too. They didn't swim, did they?
Yeah.
Um, so it's plausible, it's possible, and all the
Well,
rest of that stuff.
it's how people got into Britain, so it's
Yeah, we also got here.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many animals that just couldn't make that crossing. We don't think about. We're just thinking about the ones we can't prove. But the reason I mention it is because during that whole time, whenever I had a big doubt about whether it could be a reality in this country, your sighting would always be the thing I would reference and say, well,
Uh-huh.
actually, I really believe this lady. It's such a convincing sighting, and I've always really liked it. But I'm aware that a lot of other people probably don't know about that sighting. So could you tell us a little bit, how it happened, all the background, where it was, etc.?
Yeah, so it happened up, in Kermiley, which is up in Angus. It's
Ah,
north of Dundee. So it's kind of up about 8 miles inland from where Arbroath is on the east coast. So it was back, I reckon it was probably kind of 79, 1980, something like that.
ah,
Because I was about kind of 7, 8 years old at the time. So yeah, basically the main sighting, it was during the day, and I was up at my grandparents, and basically we were out I was out with the dog. Likely I was going down to the neighbours. We used to go and pick up newspapers from the neighbours that
mhm,
lived down the road, so that's more than likely what I was doing. So where my grand's house is, it's along a track, and one of the little driveway kind of tracks is a bit curved, and so that leads down onto this track, which then leads onto a wee kind of farm road, basically.
ah,
And so I was kind of coming down this wee curved track with the dog, and the dog she just stopped in her track. She just stopped dead and started she was growling and whining, and her
mhm,
hackles were up, and I still remember it so clearly. And I just kind of at the time, I remember seeing that, but I just kind of kept going past her because I was probably running
mhm,
as I did when I was younger, not anymore, but and just looked up along the track, and there was just this big black figure standing in the track, and it had its back to me, and it was just this large black figure. I mean, I used to kind of describe it because I didn't know about Bigfoot. Obviously, back in those days,
mhm,
there's no kind of internet and stuff. So I used to describe it as it looked like a gorilla, but it was upright. It wasn't like hunched over. Because I remember it being like absolutely black and no neck. It didn't look like a person. It looked
mhm,
like, just that kind of head, shoulders thing. It was really kind of really stocky figure. And I think to me then it was quite big because I was probably quite small. But I just
mhm.
remember just in shock. I just stood there. I mean, I was just kind of in shock for however long, probably not more than a few seconds, and then just kind of screamed and ran back up to the house. I mean, it was standing. I remember it was standing with its back to me, and there's ash trees on the path, and it had a branch that it had bent down, and it was just looking at the leaves on this ash branch. So when I screamed, the arm comes down and it starts to kind of turn to its right, just kind of to look behind it, and I was off. I never saw its face. Um, I mean, the prospect of what its face was like was probably something that haunted me for a long time as a kid. You know what I mean? You can kind of really scare yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'm sure you can imagine all kinds of things for years
Yeah,
after that. So, as you were
yeah.
coming down the path, it was off to to the left of you? How far away from you do you think it was when you saw
Well,
it?
now I know. I mean, I've gone back. Obviously, I mean, we still own that house. Like the family still
Ah,
has that house. My grandparents have passed away now, but we, so I can go up there. I've been up there. I've measured the distances. I had my brother as a stand-in and
hmm.
measured the distance between where I was roughly standing and where it was. So it was about 30 meters. So it wasn't that far away.
That's pretty close.
And I measured how high it looked because there was a cottage on that track and it was standing kind of next to that. And so where its head seemed to stop just below where the gutterings were
Okay.
on the roof. So I measured that and it was kind of about 2 meters, roughly two
Yeah.
meters. So and as I say, it was broad daylight. It must have been either late spring or early summer. And yeah, so there was nothing fleeting about this. There was nothing kind of, it wasn't hidden at all. It was blatantly there in the middle of this
Mm.
track, in the middle of the day, just doing
Wow.
what it was doing,
And is
And
the area, I'm guessing it's very underpopulated area.
it used to be. I mean, it's more populated now. Back then there was that cottage. There was my grandparents' cottage, and then along the other side of that track there was two joined up cottages. So at that time there was only
Uh-huh.
4 people, and then there's a couple of farms in the vicinity, kind of further, kind of a mile or two. And at that time it was all very heavily forested with Sitka spruce. So the spruce came right up to the tracks. It was just like
Mhm.
fields worth of this stuff. It's all gone now. I think on my video there is a picture that I found, an aerial picture of the cottage, and it shows you that, it's all wooded,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah, it could be quite a creepy place, especially kind of after that
Yes, sure. I mean,
incident.
you must have spent time there after as well, years afterwards. Did you ever
Yeah,
have to
at the
walk
time
that
I was
road
kind of,
again alone?
yeah, I mean, you just had to kind of, I suppose, as a kid, I don't know. I mean, you always kind of like, well, it was dismissed obviously by
Mm.
the adults who were saying, no, no, it was a neighbor or whatever, and
Yeah.
it just bloody wasn't a person. Never mind a neighbor.
Yeah.
And the way the dog reacted, if it was a neighbor, she wouldn't have
Yeah.
behaved like that. You know what I mean? It was just a strange thing. So, but you had to keep. I was up at my grandparents' a lot, and you always wondered what the hell was that,
Hmm.
but you never knew. So you just kind of, what's interesting is, yeah, I went up there years and years and years. And then when I went up, once started researching this, when I went up, it was with this in mind. I actually was shaking. I went and stood on the track where I'd
Uh-huh.
stood. And I remember physically shaking. It was like a real kind of almost a panic reaction. It was like reliving it to some extent. I made myself go into the woods and up round the quarries and
Mm.
everything. I'm absolutely crapping it, to be quite honest with you. But I just felt that I kind of had to face that, if you like. It was,
It's very brave. I mean, that's
yeah,
classic trauma response.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
when I listened to the sighting on Chris's elusive documentary or on your video,
Uh-huh.
um, it's full of those small trauma-based details, unnecessary
Yeah,
details that you can't forget because they're part of the sighting. I always
yeah,
used to say to people, if somebody reported, it used to be this way. Everybody knows I'm looking for these details now, but if somebody reported, 3 or 4 different random details of their sighting, pre and post, that are unnecessary to the sighting, that to me sort of it means that it's stuck in your mind. Those are the details you can't
yeah.
forget because it
Yeah,
happened.
it's hard to be consistent. I mean, because I've interviewed witnesses as well, and I've gone
Mm.
and done a little bit of field research based on sightings up here and things as
Yeah.
well. And obviously, I used to get quite a few emails from people and stuff, and or sent to me by Debbie Hatswell. If they were kind
Yeah.
of from Scotland, and some people are just you just can't doubt them. They're just so
Yeah.
specific. It's
Hmm.
just the detail, as you say, these little details, all these little weird things that they mention.
Hmm.
And I think people who are trying to hoax can't do that.
Yeah.
because they haven't seen what they're claiming to see, so they can't describe it. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you can't describe something in great detail unless you've actually seen it.